Hello my fashion lovers, welcome to today's tutorial. Please, if you have not subscribed to my channel, subscribe, click on the notification bell to be notified anytime I post a new video. I post new videos every week. Please subscribe, like, comment on my videos. On today's tutorial, we're going to be looking at how to cut and sew an off-shoulder bustier. So stick around. Let's go to the cutting tape. The length I'm working with is 16 inches plus 1 inch sewing allowance. 16 inches plus 1 inch sewing allowance, that will make it 17. And we're going to determine the amount of fabric we're going to use for the bustier, for the off-shoulder bustier. And the biggest measurement is 35, which is the bust. And when you divide 35 by 4, it's going to give you 8.5. We're going to add like 5 inches. Okay, so what I have here is going to be enough. I hope you're going to see my markings. So let's start. For the length we are working with, for the off shoulder, we're working with 16 inches. I'll be taking away 5 inches from the 16 inches plus 1 inch sewing allowance. This is what I have here. The length is 16 inches plus 1 inch sewing allowance, and you're going to take away, I'm deducting 5 for the off shoulder. You can take away 4, you can take away 5, depending on how you want it to be, but for me, I'm taking away 5 inches. So my measurement is going to start from this 5 inches. My chest line is going to be 9 inches. My bust point is 10.5. My under bust is 13.5. And the half length is 16 plus 1 inch sewing allowance, which is going to be the waist line. Let me read it out. And I'm going to mark it. This is the chest line. This is the bust point. This is the under bust. And this is the waist line. And this is going to be, this is our neckline. On my bust point, the nipple to nipple measurement I'm working with is 7.5 inches. The nipple to nipple measurement is 7.5 inches. I'm going to add half inch to it for joining allowance. So when I divide it by 2, it's going to give me 4. So I'll impute it here. I'll impute it down to the waist, to the waistline. I will put it here. Then on this neckline, I'm going to, because I want this neckline to be a little bit wide open, what I have here is 4 inches. On this neckline, I'm going to take 4.5. I'm going to take 4.5, and I will connect. Then now we're going to take the darts. Now we're going to take the darts. On this bust point, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. and I'm going to go up by 1 inch on the bust point, because I wouldn't want the bust to be protruding. I want it to be a little bit relaxed on the bust side without it to eliminate pointy edges. That's why you go up by 1 inch and come down by 1 inch. And for the dart intake, you can check the difference between your bust and your under bust. The bust I'm working with is 35 and the under bust is 32. 35 minus 32 will give you 3 inches. Then 3 inches, you're going to divide it by 2 because you're going to place it on both sides. So what I have here is 1.5. I have 1.5 here. On this side, I have 1.5, and I'll take it down to the waistline, 1.5 here. On this neckline, because I want it to have to relax on my neck, I'm going to take 1 inch from here, and I'm going to take 1 inch from here. I'm going to connect. On this side, I'm going to connect too. We came up by 1 inch on the bust point, so I'm going to connect to the 1 inch you came up with. And for this, we're going to use our curve to connect to the bust point. And on this side, I'm going to connect to. Then I will take this down with a straight line. Take this down with a straight line. And for this part, make sure you blend. Make sure you blend out these edges to avoid pointy edges. Make sure you blend it out. Make sure that your bustier is curvy. Brings out the shape. On this neckline, the chest measurement I'm working with is 12 inches. It's 12 inches. 12 divided by 2 will give me 6. These darts, I'll be cutting it off. And what we have here is 2 inches. I'll be cutting it off. So I'm going to add it back. I'm going to add it back plus my 2 inches sewing allowance. I'll add it here. For the bust I'm working with is 35. When you divide it by 4, it will give you 8.5. The ½ inch I'll be cutting off from here. I will add it. I will take 1 plus 2 inches sewing allowance. For the under bust I'm working with is 32. When you divide by 4, it will give you 8. I'll be cutting off these darts. That is 3 inches. I will add it back plus 2 inches sewing allowance. The waist measurement I'm working with is 28. When you divide it by 4, it will give you 7. I'll impute it here, plus the 3 inches I'll be cutting off from here. I'll add it back, plus 2 inches sewing allowance. Add it. That will connect. You can use your free hand, or you can use your ruler to connect. And on this place, I'm going to connect my armhole. For the chest line, 6 inches for the chest line. The chest line I'm working with is 12 inches. When you divide it by 2 to give you 6 inches. And because I'm going to take away 2 inches from here, I will impute it. Then add ½ inch sewing allowance. ½ inch sewing joining allowance. Depending on what you're making for the neckline, you can come down by 2 inches. You can come down by 2 inches for your neckline and you connect it up. We're going to connect it. I'm going to use a sweetheart neckline. If you want to use a sweetheart neckline, I'm going to connect it like this. From these 2 inches, you connect it. Depending on the neck you want to give your off-shoulder bustier. Then you cut it off before you cut. But for this style, I'm going with a straight neckline. I'm working with a straight neckline. Okay, let's cut. When you get to this place, make sure you curve your hand. Don't cut it straight, curve your hand. Cut the side. And this is not there. On the bust points, make sure you notch. On the bust points, make sure you notch it so that when you are joining, you will have issues joining. Make sure you notch the bust points. Make sure you notch the bust points so you don't have issues when you are joining. To be easier for you to join. This is what I have. Off shoulder bustier. Now we're going to cut the pad. We're going to cut the pad. You can as well put your interfacing, iron your interfacing, and cut your breast pad. To cut the breast pad, I'll be using the strongest wording. I'll be using the strongest wording to cut the breast pad. Just take it. Place your fabric on. Your breast pad will be stopping at your underbust. That is where the breast pad is going to stop. Stop at the underbust. And you're going to measure 5 inches from the bust points. You're going to measure 5 inches. You're going to measure 5 inches from the bust points. Measure 5 inches. This is my 5 inches. And this is the under bust. Let me use another color so that you can see what. Make sure you follow the curve and cut. Do not cut it straight. To the under bust. And make sure you notch your bust point so that when you're joining, it will be easier for you to join. And cut off. For this part, we're going to connect. Use a straight line and connect. Make sure you cross check before you cut. I'm going to cut. And for the middle parts, make sure you fold. Make sure it's on fold. Make sure it's on fold before you cut. I'm going to come down by 1 inch too. You stop at your under bust. Come down by 1 inch, by half inch. Half inch. Now cut. Make sure you notch the bust point. Notch the bust points so it's easier for you. Now I'm going to gum it. Make sure you gum the shiny parts. Gum the shiny parts. Gum the shiny parts. You can use your iron to gum. To gum the shiny parts. This is the back. To cut the back, the off-shoulder blouse, to cut the back, we're still going to follow the same process that you followed while cutting the front. We're still going to minus take away our 5 inches. This is where it's going to start. We took out 5 inches. We took out 5 inches. The back and the front are not the same. So the only measurement we are taking from the back is going to be only the chest line and the waist measurements. The back and the front are not the same, so there's no need for under bust, waist, and all of under bust and bust. By taking only our chest line, it's easier. When you are marking the back, we take only our chest line and also our waist. The nipple to nipple measurements, chest line, waist, this is the neckline. The nipple to nipple measurement I'm working with is 7.5 inches. When I divide it by, I'm going to add half an inch to it, making it 8 inches. Divide it by 2, it will give me 4 inches. I'm going to take it down. And before you do this, make sure you take out your 1-inch zip allowance for the back. Make sure you take out your 1-inch zip allowance for the back. Your zip allowance first. After taking the zip allowance, from this every measurement you're taking it after the zip allowance. So we're going to take our 4 inches. We're going to take our 4 inches. On this chest line, I'm going to come down by 1 inch. Come down by 1 inch. On the waistline, I will take half inch on the waistline, the 2 sides. I'm going to connect this is our dart. And for the neckline, the chest measurement we are working with is 6 inches. I'm going to mark it here, plus half inch joining allowance. 6 inches plus half inch joining allowance. I'll mark it here. The bust measurement I'm working with is 35. When I divide it by 4, it's going to give me 8.5. I'll put it here, plus 2 inches sewing allowance. For the waist measurement I'm working with is 28. Divided by 4, it will give me 7, plus 2 inches sewing allowance. And this half that I'm going to take out, that is 1 inch. I'll add it here. Now connect. for the neckline and connect. It's easier to draft the back. With the back, you don't have issues drafting. Then to avoid zip bulge, having folds at the back of your fabric, at the back of your dress, you're going to come up by, on the waistline, go up by 1 inch to avoid zip bulge. Go up by 1 inch, then connect it back to the waistline. Connect it back to the waistline to avoid folds. Please, if you have any question, ask in the comments section. Now we're going to cut. Make sure you notch your zip allowance and open it up. The same way you cut your fabric, that is the same way you're going to cut your lining.